In this episode, Tulsa Read reveals one of the most important aspects of playing music. Let's get started. Groups of people.
Well, actually, I found my niche more with the smaller seminars. Okay. And that's what I've done more than SPAH, because SPAH only happens, once a year. They have their convention for, I think it's 5 days long. But I think when you're doing seminars for the general public, you're going to get let's say in my case, non-harmonica players showing up for the seminars because they want to find out, do I really want to learn this instrument? They're curious. So they want to see what this is all about. But with SPAH conventions, that's all harmonica players in front of you. And you could have anywhere from 100 to 500 harmonica players in a big room, and they could be at all levels, beginners, intermediates, and the world's best professional harmonica players. So that's a lot of pressure. So whatever comes out of my mouth better be right. You don't dare make a mistake and have somebody correct you in front of everyone like that. So there's a lot of pressure, and I'll never forget the first time I did a big seminar for SPAH. I was a nervous wreck before I went on, and somebody said, Tulsa, just relax. Just act like you're in your own studio teaching a private lesson. Don't do anything different. Just do your method of how you teach and act like it's a big studio of yours. And so I took his advice, and I got through it really comfortably, and it was very successful. And through the years, SPAH conventions used me for doing their gospel harmonica seminars, their bluegrass harmonica seminars, and their country harmonica seminars. And I never wanted to do the blues harmonica seminars because there was plenty of those guys that could handle that job. They didn't need me to do that. There was a good selection they could choose from. But doing the SPAH convention is a learning experience too, because not only do you learn in the auditoriums or the small rooms where they conduct different seminars, but there's the learning experience of when you're not in those rooms and you're out in the hallway, in the lobby, and you sit down and you're with unknown harmonica players you've never met before, and you start jamming or just get in conversation. You can learn things. And I'll never forget the first time I was at a SPAH convention, and I can't remember the year, and I'm not sure exactly the location, but I'm going to guess. I think it was in St. Louis, Missouri. I was out in the lobby, and I sat down on this bench, and there was about 5 of these old-timers there that played strictly chromatic harmonica. And when I say old-timers, I was young at the time. I don't even know how old, maybe 20, 21. And these guys must have been like in their 70s and 80s. And when they weren't playing, I just happened to ask, I go, by the way, why don't you guys like the diatonic harmonica players? Because back then it was mainly chromatic players, chord harmonica players, bass harmonica players that were going to SPAH conventions. There was very few diatonic players that were going to SPAH conventions in the early days. But as you know, now I would say it's the majority of diatonic players that show up at SPAH conventions. But back then I asked them, I go, why don't you like the diatonic harmonica players? And they go, well, they do all that blues. And I go, yeah. And they go, but they don't play the melody. And so I'm thinking, they don't do melody. Oh, they're right. Most of them are just playing riffs, taking solos, and doing some rhythm, some open chords behind the singer and guitar player, whatever. So I said to myself, all right, when I get back home, that's what I'm going to focus on. I'm going to learn note for note the melody, and then I'll worry about the riffs and the solos. And it's all boils down to being fully organized and how you construct music in general. It's just like building a house. You have to build the foundation first, build upon the foundation second, and build around the foundation third. And in music, our foundation is the melody. And number 2, you build upon the melody, and that's where you start putting your riffs and your solos. And building around it is adding whatever sound effects you need, a vibrato here and there, or some other type of sound effect to add to it. But you should follow it in its proper steps to be organized. And speaking about that process, let's compare blues harmonica playing with bluegrass harmonica playing. Well, there's umpteen blues harmonica players in the world. But there's just a handful of good bluegrass harmonica players in the world. And you know, bluegrass harmonica players have a tougher job at what they have to do compared to a blues harmonica player. Because the average blues harmonica player doesn't really play the melody. They rely on their lead guitar player, their singer, their keyboard player to play the melody all the time. Okay? But in bluegrass has its own set of rules, no matter if you play the harmonica, the mandolin, banjo, fiddle, guitar. You all, in order to be at the same level of your musicianship, you have to know, in that order, the foundation. You have to know these bluegrass songs, note for note, the melody. Then you have to know how to play the art of rhythm. And there's various rhythm patterns to learn. Number 3, you have to know how to improvise and do solos. And if you don't have all 3 of those, you're not going to be with the same level of these other string instruments. That's just how it is. And so you have a tougher job if you're going to pursue bluegrass harmonica playing. It's a lot tougher than blues.
You've played harmonica with lots of bluegrass musicians over the years. Have you had any issues, say, promoters not really wanting the harmonica there because they have a misconception of, similar to what your experience at the SPAH with the older gentlemen, harmonica players, blues players don't play the melody. Have you run into that type of thing, and is it getting better?
That's a good point. Now, I'm speaking strictly on bluegrass concert promoters. They want traditional bluegrass instruments. And to them, they think harmonica is not considered one of the non-bluegrass instruments. But it was there in its early days. There just wasn't hardly anybody that played it, and there was hardly anyone that could play it really good. But it was one of the early instruments that was involved with the birth of bluegrass music. Bluegrass music is an American form of music, but it really is made of musicians that came over here in the early settler days from Europe, from Japan, all over, and got together in these early settlers camps, and at night they would have these jam sessions. And next thing you know, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of that culture of that German musician, a little bit of the Irish musician was rubbing off onto each other, and it was actually the very birth of bluegrass music was just starting. That was the seed of the growth of bluegrass music. It was a combination of all that. Now, a lot of these concert promoters, I learned right from the start, if they found out I was a harmonica player, they wouldn't allow me on stage to perform at the big bluegrass festivals. Because, like I said, they thought the purists of bluegrass musicians would be strictly the string instruments: guitar, mandolin, fiddle, banjo, upright bass. Even hammered dulcimer wasn't even allowed. Okay? So I was the leader of my bluegrass bands for years, so I would tell the promoter I was the leader of the band. They never asked me what instrument did I play, was I the singer. They just knew I was the leader of the band. So by the time it was time for us to hit the stage and start playing, I'm out there playing my harmonica, and there's nothing the promoter can do. And the people are really enjoying my playing, and I have my band there, and that's how I weaseled my way into doing a lot of the bluegrass festivals. And it really paid off. And it wasn't that situation every time I was doing bluegrass festivals. That would happen to some, not all. There were other bluegrass festival concert promoters that was a little more open-minded and would just figure, well, he must be good, so his band's really good, so I'll just let them play. Yeah. But also, one of the things that runs through some of these concert promoters' minds back then was thinking, harmonica? Now, we don't want a harmonica player out on stage because he probably sounds like Bob Dylan, or he sounds like a blues harmonica player, a Little Walter. And I'm not knocking these people's playing. I'm just saying that style is running through their head. Maybe I'm going to sound like that. And then they find out I'm on stage playing with my bluegrass band, and I'm playing like Foggy Mountain Breakdown and all these well-known bluegrass pieces, especially that shows off banjo pickers. And that brings me to the point of, how did I get influenced to play bluegrass harmonica playing? And it wasn't even a harmonica player. My influence to play bluegrass harmonica was from Earl Scruggs, the king of bluegrass banjo playing. When I was, I think, 17, I was listening to Earl Scruggs records, and I'm going, oh my God, look at all those notes he's playing. All, you know, it just blew my mind, all those notes. And I'm thinking, boy, I would love to do something like that on the harmonica someday. And that was one of my goals. And sure enough, I started learning bluegrass songs, and I never wanted to have fiddle players in my band, because those guys were heavily into like Celtic music, it seemed like. And most of the times when I come across the fiddle players in bluegrass, they would like to hog the shows, hog the songs, hog the jam sessions, and that annoyed the heck out of me. So I always made sure that all my bluegrass bands had outstanding banjo players that played the Earl Scruggs style. Not clawhammer style where you just strum, you know, the banjo. I want really fast pickers. And that's how I got into playing bluegrass harmonica playing.